So my name is Jason Mackey. I am the new director of Connectional Ministries for the conference. And for this session, you are in the Ruts in the Discipleship Path session. The intention of this session, as we were planning this day, was that we would make this a practical, hands-on workshop to debrief and evaluate what you did at Navigate, for those of you who were there, to help you in your process of creating your church's discipleship plan, maybe answer some questions, do some team think to help you think through a problem, or maybe even just learn from you as far as how you've creatively addressed some of the discipleship questions. And so just by a show of hands, who attended Navigate? Okay. And so that means the other three of you did not. No problem. So I know I've got three that have no idea what I'm talking about, or at least weren't there. Navigate was led by the two guys that wrote this book, Stride, Mike Schreiner and Ken Willard. Really nice guys, enjoyed working with them. They are the leads at come on in, sit anywhere. Mike and Ken are the two key leaders and pastors at Morning Star Church, and they've created this book to kind of be a step-by-step process for how your church can create a discipleship pathway. So often we in the church do worship, we do church, but we're not really sure what we're doing. Like we know what we've done, but we're not aiming at anything. We're not trying for any product. We're trying for disciples. But I remember when I was first at my last church, I was at Cross Point, and a seminarian who's in the church called me up and said, "So, Jason, how do you define a disciple?" I was like, I know how I define it. Do you mean how Cross Point defines it? How the United Methodist Church defines it? That's a really tough question, right? We aren't always sure what our end product is. And so Mike and Ken were all about helping us understand where are we moving people to. And so I have a handout here. I've got a lot of handouts, apparently plenty. And I wanted to kind of walk us through a summary of the book for those of you who have not read the book, and for those of you who have, hopefully this is a review and this is just to keep it interesting.
Sorry. I thought there was just one.
And also on your table are pink question sheets. If you think of a question and you want to write it down, please feel free to do that. So the whole point of discipleship process really goes back to our roots as good Wesleyans following John Wesley's leadership. When Wesley first created this movement, this Methodist movement, you all know that he grouped people in small groups, right? He had his broad societies, and then that narrowed down to the more dedicated people who were in classes, and they learned a little bit more. And then the ultra-dedicated, really devout, they joined together in bands, which when I think of a band, I think big, but he's thinking, modern three-piece, like 3-4 people. He was moving people closer together, tighter in discipleship, so that they would learn deeper, right? The closer together we come, the fewer there are, the more intimate we become, the more trusting, vulnerable, the willingness to share, right? We don't really share well in worship unless it's a prayer request about old Aunt Ethel, right? But in our small group or with a mentor, we're willing to be very vulnerable and we're willing to grow. Because Wesley understood that's where we grow spiritually and that's where we grow well. Bob Tuttle, who is a Wesley academic, he says, the only way to keep a Methodist alive is to keep them moving. Wesley's process was moving them along the way. And that's the whole point of a discipleship plan, is you're moving people along a pathway. They've got steps. They know what's next. And it's interesting, I do CrossFit in the mornings, right? I'm one of those crazy people, I'm sorry. And I got one more for you. Yep, no problem. So I do CrossFit in the morning, and I recently have kind of been looking at the training that they provide for the coaches, for the people who are in charge. And if you go on CrossFit's website, they have level 1 coaching certification. And so every coach has to become a level 1. And then you can get all of these other certifications. You can get certifications on flexibility, on running, on weight training, on scaling, like all of these different certs that come under being a level 1 coach. And then if you want to be a better coach, you pursue level 2. And then if you want to train coaches, you go and you become a level 3. And now they're developing, level 3 is focused on training coaches and individuals. Now they're developing a level 4, which helps develop courses for CrossFit. And they've got this beautifully laid out on their website, so you know if you're interested in going upline, level 1, level 2, level 3, it's a process. It's very simple. They ain't got that in the church. Even when it comes to ordination, right? If you've been in the process, like they change it. And my wife likes to call them moving flaming hoops, right? Trying to figure out what do you need to do. Because the requirements change, especially if you come off a general conference, a different book of discipline, which discipline are you under? And then each conference is allowed to adjust it for themselves. It's very confusing. The point of a discipleship pathway is to eliminate that kind of confusion. To help people know from the moment they walk in your doors, what's the goal? Where are you headed? What's your next steps along the line? Because ultimately we do want to move people. We want to move people in growth. And anybody know Dred Scott, Perky? Dred Scott, really cool guy if you've ever met him. He's got long dreadlocks. He's about 6'3", 6'4", plays jazz downtown. Amazing guy and a pastor. And served in Philadelphia and in Baltimore for a little while. He's back in our conference as a retiree. And Dred, I was having a conversation with him a while back, and he said, you know, Jason, events inspire, but processes transform. Too often in our discipleship plan, we inspire people with events. We're going to have a prayer service. We're going to have a tent revival, right? We're going to have a community carnival. We inspire them with an event, and we hope that they're going to cling to the church. But once they come, we don't have any process for leading them through. We're not really sure what they should do next. His point was, the events are great, but focus on the process, because that's where the transformation is going to happen. Would you hand these out as I figure out how to turn down the AC? Okay. See? Okay. Hopefully that helps. So as Mike and Ken kind of walk through the book, the first thing that they want you to do is they want to make sure, is your church ready, or does your church need a discipleship pathway? And I'm just curious, how many churches need a discipleship pathway? Great, right answer. Every one of us does. How do you convince your church, though, right? How do you convince them that they need a discipleship pathway? We've been doing this for 50 years. I've been here the whole time. I know what we're doing, right? And that's your 10-year-old in the children's program. So this handout, this is one of the things that they had done, one of the presentations, on the 16 signs that your church may need a renewed focus on disciple making. So as you're working with them, trying to help them understand where they need to focus, why they need to focus, you'll see some of these things. You know, if they're noticing high turnover, does your church receive a lot of first-time and second-time guests, but never see them again, right? People put up with us once and maybe even twice. We get, here at Trinity, we get at least 100 first-time visitors every year. At least. And if you think about your own congregation, especially if you have a confirmation class that comes through, I can almost guarantee that you see at least 20 first-time visitors a year. I can guarantee it. Could you imagine if even half of those stuck and didn't bounce off and didn't just spin? You know, what do we miss out on? And the people in the pews, they don't have a clue, right? If they're not invested leaders, if they don't see the numbers, if they don't know it, they don't realize what's missing. On the back, you see about service. This one will speak to a lot of your current leaders. That 80-20 rule, right? Are you sick of being part of the 20 and knowing that the 80 keeps growing? That's what this is focused on. New members and attendees coming to worship, but not serving anywhere. Number 6, right? People are not plugging in. They don't see the on-ramps. They're not sure how to crack this nut. You know, she always works the kitchen for every event. She doesn't need any help, right? You've been there? He's been the head usher for 20 years, and he has his key 3 people that he always works with. He doesn't need anyone else. Sometimes it's the systems we have established. Other times it's that they don't see the inroads. Missed connections. They talk a big part about connection opportunities and making sure people feel that they not only see the inroads, but they feel welcomed into. And it's more than just hospitality, but it's getting a name. It's having a face and a connection point where you can ask questions, right? You can follow up and get clarity to the church and the process. Members and attendees not inviting family or friends to worship or other church events. Do they? Around here, if you show up at 11, we apologize for worship. You do that in your church? If you show up at 11 o'clock, we're like, oh, I'm so glad you came. You should come to 9:30. Oh. Right? Because they showed up at the service that isn't your best foot. Right? There's no connection. It's one of those, it's not by design, it's not by intention, but it's a cold service, right? We all have those things, those events. And of course you're not going to invite your family and friends. Like, I don't want to bring them to this. It's bad enough that I go, right? If that is resonating in people's heads, they're not consciously aware of it. They're not realizing it. Otherwise, they go elsewhere, right? But it should ring a bell. Why don't we invite our family and friends? Are we embarrassed about something? Well, maybe something needs to change. That's the point of these 16 points. Finances, we're not even going to go there. It's kind of self-explanatory. But look through those 16. That becomes a tool for you to help you with your congregation, with your leaders, to see where change needs to happen. I just want to pause there. Any of this strike close to home for you guys?
Yes.
Yes. Any in particular you want to share?
Like I said at the previous session, we're working on simplified accountable structure. And the leadership gets it. They understand, the key people get it. They know we need to change if we're going to reach new people for Christ. And that's what they're passionate about. And they're excited about that. So we're talking about moving our earlier service an hour later because we have a great lively worship service at 8 a.m. And that's not when people want to worship. So we're talking about moving it to 9. But then how do we plug the people in? Are we willing to invite people? You know, I've been reading Get Their Name, and they've been talking about most people don't invite their friends and family because they're afraid they'll be embarrassed by someone, by the pastor, by the music, by something. And so they don't invite people. So how are we connecting? How are we changing from from visitor to guest? And expecting those people to come. And then how do we plug them in? And we're stuck.
Now that's interesting language, by the way, and I want to point that out for people. The difference between a visitor and a guest. A visitor, you intend that they're only here once and done. They're only here for the Christmas Eve service. They're only here for the confirmation class. A guest, you're anticipating that they will return. A guest you are prepared for, and you're hoping that they'll become a regular attender. Right? It's just a minor mentality shift. But yeah.
It's huge.
So you talked about working with Mike Slaughter. Sue Nielsen Giving is, she's a director of probably Connectional Ministries or whatever it is in the Ohio Conference. And I know that because, my seminaries at United.
Yeah.
And, she taught some classes, and she was very adamant also about that and working, who also expressed that Mike's demeanor was not exactly the most, it was difficult.
He's not PC.
No, he's not PC at all.
He's blunt.
Yeah, he's very blunt. So, but anyway, it's interesting though when he talks or when he teaches, because he does tell you how it is. But part of hers too was that developing a plan, even when you do have an outreach, to be able to then what will you do next week to be able to continue to bring them in. So I had this, so now next week we're going to honor the kids doing this, and then the next week we're going to have this and that, to be able to develop a plan. It was actually one of my papers that I had to do. I had to develop a plan from one event to be able to, I think they called it, I don't know what, I forget the wording. It's a semester ago. So, but you had to develop that, and, it ended up being like a 18, 20-page paper because you had to develop this plan of how you're going to incorporate them back in.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just saying that in the aspect of, because I believe that, what we're getting ready to talk about with the discipleship and things, it really is, we find good events, but even at the events, how do we get them in? And after we do that, then this is where I've fallen short over the years, is how then do I develop that leader, or not develop leadership, but develop discipleship?
Mm-hmm.
How do I, with the Bible studies or whatever it may be, and if that's not my gift, then I got to look out for other leaders.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, she's another good resource. She has numerous different books at Floodgate, and I'm not here to promote her, but her books that she had for the class were very helpful.
She also writes Ultimately Responsible, doesn't she?
Yes.
Isn't that hers?
Yeah. Yeah, she has a couple different ones. So
She's very good.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's what this point was. Is about creating that discipleship plan. Once you've got them. Sorry.
Talk about burnout. When I got to the place I'm leaving now, the previous pastor just taking over everything, and wanted so much control, and people just let her do it. So it was more of a point of trying to get people engaged again and trying to buy into their own building and their own church and their own community again.
Mm-hmm.
Because people were just so burnt out that they didn't even want to do the basic functions anymore.
Right. That's scary, but it happens. It happens. We can be our own worst enemies.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a strong leader, or if you're not a strong leader, but you feel like you're a strong leader because you're a really great administrator, you can keep a lot of plates spinning,
Mm-hmm.
but once you leave, they all go crashing down. So, yeah.
But the other piece for discipleship for me is we have folks in the congregation who never went past Sunday school. They're not mature, developed Christians, and it's because we have failed them as a church
Mm-hmm.
to have a pathway for them to follow to keep growing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just the folks that we're trying to connect to in the community, it's the folks who are already there.
Right. You're absolutely right. Well, let's get to that then. So on the handout, on the blue handout that you have, you see the 10 steps. It's actually, I believe, 11 or 12 chapters in the book, and I condensed it to 10 steps that seem to make the most sense to me. This actually is a very functional book, very practical, hands-on. I encourage you to grab it. It's great to work with your leadership teams. But these were the points that I lifted out. First thing, everything's rooted in prayer. If you don't have a prayer team in your church, this is one of the greatest first steps that we need to do. Man, I heard the stat a while ago. It was something like 60-70% of pastors don't even have a set prayer time every day. That's heartbreaking. How can we do ministry without the one that's supposed to charge us, right? We're like Energizer bunnies. When the battery is empty, where's the recharge come from? And how can we ever expect our congregation to get there if we're not there? So prayer not only for ourselves, but also prayer teams. And he says, once you gather the gifted, once you've identified those people who have the spiritual gift of prayer, and a great way might be just a spiritual gifts inventory on a Sunday morning. Maybe you want to preach a quick series on that and have everybody take a spiritual gifts inventory and turn them in. And guess what? You've got all these responses now of people that have giftings, if it's not there. And then identify those people who are gifted in prayer, bring them together, and start looking at the prayer requests that your congregation is lifting up, right? You might already be naturally outwardly focused and not realize it. Your congregation, in their prayers, will reveal what's important to them. We pray for what's important to us. So I'm worried about my kids. I'm going to pray about my kids. I'm stressing about my finances or my marriage. I'm going to pray about those things. But if I'm also concerned about a friend who's going through a difficult time, the local school, the fire chief, maybe another organization that I'm involved in. We happen to be very blessed here at Trinity. We have a number of people who are involved at the Med Center. They volunteer there and some work there. And so that's often a prayer that is lifted up. This patient and that patient. Are your prayers inward focused, just about us? Or are they outward focused to the community and the organizations that are going to fuel you? This will start to be the burgeonings of your discipleship pathway. You'll start to see some tie-ins here. Prayer walk. Anybody ever done a prayer walk before? Okay. There's a website down here, video, what prayer walking is not. Would somebody like to demonstrate what prayer walking is not? Anybody? No? Okay, I'll do it. Okay. I'm here to be a fool. So what prayer walking is not, and I encourage you to take this video with your group, take them out in the community and help them do a prayer walk. When you show this video, you're going to see, and I apologize that I don't have AV, I ran out of TVs. People walking through town. Oh Lord, I pray for this house and all the sinners in it. Lord, lift them up and forgive them. And moving on, right? That is not what prayer walking is. It's not even... Right? You don't have to raise your hands. You don't have to pause at each house. You don't have to move your way through the community like that. Prayer walking is an open conversation with God where God is opening your eyes, right, to what's right in front of you, to the things that you've overlooked. Mark Batterson, circle maker, he talks about circling the District of Columbia, the 20 blocks that he focuses on, that his church, National Community Church, focuses on. And he walked through town and got a feel for the neighborhood. It's getting a feel for the houses, the families, the communities, the businesses that are right around you. The things that we drive through to get to our offices, but we never really see because we're focused on the car in front of us or the kid behind us, right? Prayer walking is consciously allowing God to speak to you while you're moving through God's mission field, right? It is not necessarily lifting up in prayer all those people, though that no doubt will be part of your own prayers later, but it's allowing God the opportunity to talk. Remember, prayer, two-way street. So they encourage you to do some prayer walking with your people. Praying on-site with insight is the point. We're going to go on-site and gain insights into the community. They suggest that you start with Joshua 1:3. I'm giving you every place where you set foot as they're entering the promised land, and God's making this promise to Joshua. God is making this promise to us and our congregations as well. Walk it. I'm going to show you that this is what I'm going to deliver to you. Questions about prayer teams? They're much more interesting when you describe them that way.
Yeah.
And your goal is 3-4 people.
I am just going to underscore my little experience with Mackey 28 and those kinds of things. If you don't get the prayer point work in, the rest of it falls apart.
Yep.
Because you can do, the change in structures and all that technique stuff is important to know, but if you don't get folk invested in praying, then it's all the stuff that we're doing rather than what God is doing through us. So.
How long did it take you to pull together the prayer teams? When you first
Never
arrived?
succeeded.
Never succeeded.
Never succeeded.
Right. I spent about 6 months when I first arrived here at Trinity trying to gather together a prayer team. And I had visions, right? We got 300 people. We should have a prayer team of at least 25, 30. 6. Right? It can be hard. We use a class here at Trinity called Place, and we learn spiritual gifts. Prayer is a rare spiritual gift. There are very few, it seems to me, maybe in your experience it's different. But there are very few that lift that out as one of their gifts. So maybe it's also because they're humble and they don't want to brag about it, so their inventories come up short. I don't know. So. Step 2, get a sit rep. Understand the layout of what you're facing, right? Size up your church as it is currently. What is your mission? What is your mission?
Make disciples.
Make disciples?
Disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world.
Okay. This is not wrong. Does anybody else have a different vision? Yeah. Mission, rather?
Mission, yeah, ours is together, seeking God, making disciples, renewing the world.
Okay. Similar. Slightly
Sure.
different, though.
Sure.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Putting our faith and love in action.
Putting our faith and love into action. Okay. When I was at Crosspoint, the mission there was love God, love others, and make disciples. Very simple was the goal. So the point is, know your mission, know what your church is doing. It shouldn't be the mile-long mission statement that was so popular 20 years ago. And everybody should know the mission, right? Everybody should be on page with the mission. Here at Trinity, we have a nursery school on the 2nd floor. Their mission better not be contradictory to our mission as a church. Otherwise, why are they doing it? Right? The people that run the kitchen, whenever there's an event, some of these kitchens are run like, man, they're better than a battle regiment, right? They're amazing armies. And they have a mission statement. Is their mission statement consistent with the church's mission statement? And if it's not, do they see that? What Mike and Ken emphasize is have conversations with people and make sure that they know where sideways energy exists, right? If they're not pushing you forward, they're taking you sideways, they're taking you off course, and they're stealing energy, and they're setting you up for future fights and failures. You're just going to be frustrated because they're not trying to do the same thing you are, right? So get a sit rep. Understand what everybody's doing. And then they suggest create a master list of ministries. This one is kind of frustrating and fun all at the same time. You will see how much your church does. Even in a little church of 20 people, you will be amazed at how many ministries 20 people can do. And do because they think they need to have it. Some you will know out of the gate, we shouldn't be doing this. Others you will know out of the gate, we do this poorly. And still others, you'll look at them and you'll be like, I didn't even know we did that. Right? On the flip side, you'll see the list and the ones will kind of line up. Oh, well, we feed kids and we take care of single moms and we watch kids after school and we do vacation Bible school and we have kids Bible study in the morning. Like, oh, there's a real kids theme going on here. We really like kids. Like, that's part of the ministry that we do. So get that full list of ministries. Look everywhere you need to get them. Look at the church's calendar. Look at the once-a-year events, worship. Look at daycare, the quilting group, the small groups that use your church, the outside church groups, right? Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, NA, AA. If they're using your facility, they're part of your mission, right? You may not see it that way, but then your mission is just being a landlord. And so is that your mission? So get that full inventory. And then they suggest seeing the disciplines that tie in with these missions. They put a strong emphasis on the spiritual disciplines. Richard Foster, if you wanted to look some of those up, and try to associate a spiritual discipline or multiples with each of these and see where the natural discipline growths are in your church.
You can also find that list if you do your statistical tables.
Mm-hmm.
You have to list the numbers of small group and large group ministries that you do. So our secretary, who's a perfectionist, she's type A, she lists all of them. And that's
Wow.
why I know we have 22 ministries going on, because she does that. So
There you go.
you can take it from what you already have. You don't have to go out and recreate the wheel.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And don't miss the other. Don't miss the other things. This year, we did not sell geraniums. Do you know the ration that I got because we did not sell geraniums for Pentecost? We don't celebrate Pentecost. We haven't in 3 years. But we killed geraniums this year. And that is a ministry, I found out, from 3 people. Right? So there's ministries that people see that we just look past. The geraniums, the flowers at Easter, the flowers at Christmas, Memorial Day, Labor Day, right? The things that we take for granted because they're in our normal worship flow. Those are ministries too. Wow, I sound like a horrible person. I'm sorry. Maybe I am. Step 3, build the discipleship team. This is, once you've got the prayer team in place, once you've got a sit rep of what all's going on, now get your team together that's going to help write this plan. This is 3 to 6 people, preferably not your church council, not the people already in charge of everything, right? Not the people that strictly represent the church, but we want a good representation of the community. So maybe this is a couple of new people. Just like Mike Slaughter said, and we presented last time, you're in charge of nominations, right? You have the ability to change the leadership structure. Your leadership team is going to represent what you're targeting, your target audience, your target community. Identify a captain who is going to help lead this team, because the next thing the team is going to do is a lot of research. They're going to do a lot of reading. There are at least 30 books mentioned in this book. At least. I would pick out the top, depending on your speed, the top 2 or 3 to give them to read through, but also pepper them with some summaries and some other information, cliff notes kind of thing. Take them to trainings, help them see what else is out there. Give them the tools and the resources that they need in order to do their jobs. And then once you've done that, ask them to name the target. That's step 4. Where are we taking people? What does a disciple actually look like? What does a disciple do? Right? How does a disciple behave? What are the qualities of a disciple? What's your target? Does anybody have a target that they're working on right now? Nope. Nobody either wants to share or nobody knows.
Some of us are moving, so we don't know.
Okay, that's fair.
A target of who we're trying to reach, or a target of who we're trying to get on the discipleship pathway?
This would be step 4, the target of where you're taking them.
What is a disciple?
What is a disciple? What does the end product look like?
So I think for us, we're really good at the plug-in. We're really good at the kind of, we call it plug-in charge up here in China, our church, but we're good at the plug-in, the initial, getting involved. We're good at the share and shine, going out and doing hands and feet. But the charge up piece, the growing deep,
Right?
developing kind of new leaders that'll grow deeper,
Right?
so that you can really witness when you share and shine. That's the piece we're sort of working on with this pathway.
Okay.
So maybe that's our target, is what that looks like all the way from a beginner, because we recognize that we need kind of a beginner stage for people that are really new in their faith.
Mm-hmm.
Not just the traditional joining the church class, but the, kind of, what does prayer look like? What does stewardship look like? What does, those things that they may never have learned, all the way up to really challenging person to grow his deep in their faith to go deeper.
Okay, so you already have a target.
Right.
You've just described some of it. And it's not what you think you described. You talked about stewardship. You talked about Christian maturity. You talked about the qualities of a disciple. That's your target, right? That's what you're striving for. Is a disciple a tither? Maybe. That's an easy measurable one. Is a disciple somebody who attends worship every week? Right? In our world today, that's rare. You get twice a month, you're a happy camper. But is a disciple, is your target every week? If we don't tell them it's every week, they're not going to aim for every week. Right? We have to know what the target is. Is the target that a disciple is in a small group, that they're learning? Again, if we don't tell them get in a small group or a Sunday school class, 50 years that was normal. That was your social hour. You didn't have TV on Wednesday night, so you went to church, right? We got to tell them what they're supposed to do, what we're shooting for, so that they know what they're targeting. Is that? I mean, you have it. You just haven't identified it as targeting.
Writing it down, kind of, to make sure
Yeah.
it's intentional,
Yeah.
organically intentional. Yes. It's not.
Yes. We work really hard with organic, and it works sometimes. But somebody somewhere along the way has to know what it actually is. Has to be intentional and have a plan, even if Joe Schmo in the pew thinks it's organic.
Even in organic gardening, you still have to weed.
Mhm.
Good analogy. Good analogy. Coming back to Morningstar and Stride, the things that they really focus on are some of the spiritual disciplines. For them, a disciple has a daily prayer time. A disciple is involved in Bible study. For them, a disciple may practice fasting, right? So those are aspects of their target.
I liked how they pointed out to have pathways within your pathway.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, there's a stewardship pathway within the discipleship pathway.
Yes.
So you don't have to feel like you have to go from not giving it all to tithing. There's a pathway.
Growing steps, baby steps along the way. Yeah. Well, and that then becomes step 5, is lay out the pathway. And it sounds like you guys, what were your 3 components you mentioned to me?
Or our, you mean the plug-in charge up, share and shine?
Yes.
Yes.
Plug-in / charge up.
No, it's 3 different things.
Okay, plug in.
Up, share and
Charge up,
shine.
share and
Share
shine.
and shine.
Just based on what you've heard and what you see, what does plug-in do?
Plug in
Connects people.
connecting the individual to that congregation, into the discipleship.
Absolutely. And what does charge up do?
It helps them to go deeper.
Okay. And what does share and shine do?
Serving.
It's a great discipleship pathway. It's obvious. It speaks for itself, right? Anybody else have other ones for your church?
Connect, serve, and grow.
Aha.
The classic.
Do we need to unpack this one? How about others? Come on, I got 2 more colors.
We were just talking about the connect, serve, and grow. I know David was saying classic, but yet it's effective. It's short, it's precise, it's in point. That's why faith created that,
Mhm.
you know. And I know he's just messing. I mean, it's just a different way of saying plug in, charge up, share, shine.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's unique. That's what we were saying. Well, even though it's a plastic, it's effective and it works.
Exactly.
Sometimes you're okay with the classics,
Yeah.
you know.
So your discipleship pathway, the first component that you see in both of these plans, and you'll see in every good plan, is that invitation. What is the on-ramp? Where do people start? What's their first steps? This is important because of your connections piece, right? This is how outsiders are going to connect and feel like they are part of. They get oriented, right? This is employee orientation, if you will. Your next piece is, they call it connections. It's the real intro to the faith, where they say you have to have a minimum discipleship knowledge. Personally, I'm out to lunch on this one. I'm not sure, like, we create these classes where we want to create the perfect disciple. Like, I want them to know about church history and Augustine and Constantine, and I want them to know about John Wesley and Martin Luther, and I want them to know about the Trinity, and I want to know about transubstantiation, and yeah, what's the minimum that they need to know to be a disciple? I think sometimes in church membership we go too far. We try and inundate them with too much. If there was, 1 6 to 8 week class, what are the basics that we're teaching them? We're not making them seminary grads. We're not making them mature believers. We're giving them the tools to grow deeper, right? And then continued growth. These become the electives. These are the ways that they can grow deeper. Maybe it is a long-term mission project, a mission trip. Maybe internationally. Maybe it is serving locally in a ministry in the church or in something else. Maybe it is a deeper class, you know? Maybe you've got a class just dedicated to Wesley's sermons. And all the weirdos in your church who love reading words from the 1700s are just going to go nuts. Like, that's the greatest thing ever. Not everybody's going to resonate. But for those people, it's going to allow them to grow deeper, right? So what is that continued growth? Specialized towards maturity. Specialized, it may be unique for different people, depending on their gift set, depending on their interests, their talents and abilities, right? Interesting concept, the law of limited performance. I'd heard this before but never actually quoted out. People soon discover the level of performance that their managers will settle for and gravitate to that level. Managers then assume that's all that people are capable of achieving, so they accept it as fact and quit challenging their people to get better. So each reinforces what the other believes. The sad part is, and I am totally guilty of this, we do this as pastors. We make up the excuses for people, and we think there's no way they can do that. And then they don't, because they don't have to. You know? Wesley did not make excuses. He was hard, man. Dude was hard on himself. What are we shooting for? Questions, observations, thoughts?
Wesley,
Sir?
You know, one of the things I was thinking about as you were talking about, you know, what's the minimum amount a person needs to know in order to be called a disciple, or to know / do, and even whenever we think about a fully committed follower of Jesus, that same question kind of rises. If we think about Morningstar had all those, I actually really liked them. They had the okay, give, and it had like from here to here and different steps in between, which I really loved. And I've been working on a little this kind of thing in the last couple of weeks, and I realized that you can have a million things on your what is a disciple list.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, or you can generalize it so much that you have like two things. That
Yes.
clearly is a happy medium, but I think that's it almost has to be simple enough that it's not achievable. It's not what I'm looking for, but it's something that people can like, oh yeah, I can see myself on this pathway, and I can see steps I need to take to continue farther on the path. That makes sense.
I think you're absolutely right. And some of it's going to be contextual, right? The easiest illustration on that one, how do they make a disciple in Sierra Leone? What does a disciple look like in Africa? Because it looks different than a disciple here in the States, right? I've been to worship in our sister village. They do 5 offerings. 5, right? People dance up to the front of the sanctuary to put their offering in, and then they dance back. They do that 5 times in a row.
Wow.
Worship is 3 hours. But are they sitting and reading Mike Slaughter or Adam Hamilton or Reggie McNeil or other Bible studies at night? No. They're not sitting down watching it on TV, doing a book study like that. Some of them don't even have scriptures. They don't even have Bibles, right? They're reciting, they're doing vacation Bible school sometimes, and calling that their study. So it's contextual. If you live in up in Milton, Pennsylvania, the discipleship path is going to look very different than it does here, possibly, depending on what are the needs of the community, what are the abilities of the community, what are you shooting for, how are you trying to move people, your target, what's your target?
Wesley even fired his own volunteers if they weren't being effective.
Who here would fire a volunteer?
Love to.
Maybe so.
Love to and would are two different things.
Yeah.
But we don't use the word volunteer anymore either. We use servant, because a volunteer serves at their convenience, where a servant gives of himself.
Absolutely.
So we're trying to change some language and mindsets.
Good.
I don't know if everybody would ever fire, but you politely push them out. You know, I think everybody's done that. I haven't gone up to somebody and said, you're fired, but
Find them a new place.
I find a new place in ministry, or I encourage them to use these other gifts in another place. It's more of a political type deal, you know, just it's selling the vision, you know, whatever. You know, it's how you communicate it. You know, so she didn't really get fired, or he didn't get fired, but they were encouraged to use other gifts in other places. You know, because if you just go up and say you're fired, well, it's probably going to blow up anyway. It's not really. It's going to be counterproductive.
There
In a
is
sense.
the legend in our conference, and it's true, of the elder who invited the volunteer into his office and said, "You're done here. You need to find another church." And that was one of the best decisions that he ever made for that congregation.
Maybe it's at that point, or it's that toxic that you have to.
Exactly. And we don't want to be that bad guy, right? That bad girl. We don't want to be unliked.
Sometimes you have to pull some weeds for your garden to grow.
It's a difficult thing. And then how do you find that balance to pastorally care for that person? Yeah. Okay, we took a left turn. Discipleship pathway. People principle. Yes.
Yeah, I was just been kicking this around. In terms of that content, should we think of it more in terms of the difference between a science major and a business major? A science major knows all the things they need to know. Music education, they know all the things I need to know. A business major knows that all I need to know is where I can find what I need. And so is that where our prayers, presence, gifts, witness, service come in? It's not that I need to know all this stuff, but I need to know where I go to find more.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just thinking out loud.
I think that sounds to me like a really good analogy. Yeah. I would hope that science major knows where to go to look for.
Well, yeah. Yeah, but I mean, you know, there are some disciplines where the emphasis is on, I have to know this.
Right.
Where with business majors, at least the ones that I graduated with, were all about, I don't have to know that, I just have to know how to find it.
Right. And, you know, generationally and culturally, that's what we're shifting to,
Right.
right? We all have
As long as I
Google in our pocket.
Yeah.
Step 6. Once you've laid out the pathway, and up until now you're spending about 3 to 6 months, right? 3 to 6 months. Advertise and launch. Pick a date 6 to 9 months out, right? You're going to need that to build the momentum. You're going to need that to get things in place. You're going to need that to get to the right season, right? What is a good time in the calendar of your church to launch something? Is a good time December 1st? No, why not?
Unless it's Christmas.
Advent, yeah. Yeah, Advent, Christmas. To launch a brand new discipleship pathway, like, that's great. You might get some first-time attenders from Christmas Eve, but your church isn't necessarily going to have ownership over it. They may not be ready. There may still be a bunch of kinks in the system to really get things moving. When might be a better time to launch something?
New Year's.
New Year's, early in the year, yeah.
People are making resolutions to change.
And I would even maybe push it back a little bit further to like the Sunday after Martin Luther King, right? Because if they go on a vacation for that extended holiday, they're gone that Sunday, and you want to preach on it, of course. And you've got a whole series that you're going to dedicate to this. So start that series the Sunday after MLK, and now you've got a couple of weeks. You've got all spring that you can get the congregation geared up for it. So by the time Easter hits, bam, Your new attenders, you connect them, they're on the discipleship pathway, you're gold. Another great time to launch?
Right.
School starts.
Lent, okay? Lent's potential, but when you hit right after Easter, you hit May, you start to lose people left and right. Soccer games, other traveling sports, graduations. Lent, you've got that nice 8 weeks, so you can definitely do a lot of education with them and get something moving. So you just got to be clear on how you can communicate that. Over here, school starting. A great time, natural cycle with people, but maybe even wait till the week after Labor Day,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
I noticed in attendance trends at my last church, people didn't come back until mid-October. So we didn't bother starting stuff till mid-October. Here, people are back even on Labor Day, but I try not to start stuff till the week after Labor Day. You got to know your context, know your congregation. Build a buzz. Use all the tools that you have to your advantage. Use your social media. Use your newsletter. Use your sermons. Drop it in the worship folder. Talk with the 10 people in church who are going to make sure that everybody knows about it. Talk about it during your giving talks. Talk about it in your weekly update that you might send out. If you do a blog post, talk about it there. Like, talk about it till you are sick of talking about it, and then talk about it at least a dozen more times, right? Get the buzz, get it out there, and when you do that, don't assume they know the lingo, right? Make sure that your people coming in, if they're new people, they're not going to know what a disciple is. They're not going to know what a discipline is. You know, discipleship is even kind of interesting. Like, help them with the pathway. This is good lingo. It's not churchy, right? Avoid acronyms, all acronyms, right? Because I don't know what it stands for. I know the word, but I don't know what your other words are. And keep it simple. And then step 7, connecting points. We've got a bunch of them listed here. Can anybody tell me how these are helpful or how you might capitalize on them?
Restrooms, you can put up flyers in front of the stalls.
Absolutely.
Saying you can do it all over, lobby too. I mean, just flyers, it's not verbal communication, but yet it's communication.
In the lobby, you could even have like different, like if you had a bulletin board where you would sign to serve, you could have it called serve board, a table where you could get connected to different things, called the connection table, something like that.
It's like you've read the book.
I haven't actually, but now I'm kind of compelled to. I'm going to try to write the authors, and they can give you a little commission on that.
Thank you.
Most people are looking for a website before they actually even set foot in a church.
Very true. So what would you put on your website?
Calendar, updated calendar,
Okay?
maybe messages.
Okay?
I liked your idea of stories from the first workshop.
Mm-hmm.
Worship times.
Mm-hmm.
Directions,
Mm-hmm.
Facebook page.
The discipleship pathway,
Mhm.
like you put it on the website.
Yeah.
That way it's a clear.
That's how you can connect.
Dress, like a dress.
Attire.
Attire.
Mhm.
Because most people, if they come overdressed, they're going to be upset. If they come underdressed, they'll be upset.
One of the things I've wanted one of our students to do, I want him to do this so bad, and we just haven't been able to do it. Take his cell phone from the moment he pulls into the parking lot until he's sitting down in worship, like halfway through the worship set. I want him to video the entire experience, walking in the door, up the stairs, through the lobby of madness on a Sunday morning where you can get coffee and food, into the back of the sanctuary, into the front, sit there as worship's starting, and then the first maybe song. Like, that shows somebody, before they've even set foot on your campus, what they're going to experience. And if you're ashamed of the video, just a thought.
I think the parking lot, I mean, if you had, parking lot's a harder one. Unless you had banners out front, like the Navigate banners, actually, theoretically you could do that. If you had parking lot attendants, you could have them wearing you know, if hopefully your logo incorporates your I don't know what you call it, like what would you call the plug-in charge of Share Shine? Would you
Your
call it
discipleship pathway.
pathway? Or yeah, you know, if you incorporate that into your some kind of graphic, including your logo,
Mhm.
and that could be a way that, other than banners, is there any other way that to make a parking lot? What are your thoughts on that?
Your people are huge. You know, just what they say when you get out of a car, or, you know, when they first pull up. I was down in North Carolina. We go down to the same place every year for vacation. We always go to one of the local churches, which in North Carolina, they have a ton of churches planting in schools. Like, that's the thing to do. You get 2-3 years in a school free of charge, and then they kick you out. And you've got to find your own place. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And so we like to go to the new plants and see what they do. And the parking lot teams, invariably, from the moment we arrive on their campus, hey, we're so glad to have you. I see you got boys with you. We do have a kids ministry. It's down the hallway, and they give us something to capitalize on. So they help orient us before we've even walked in the building as to what we can expect in a way that we can connect. At one church, we did have people who actually followed us in, or offered rather to follow us in. Hey, would you like me to take you to the worship center? And they became the connecting point. So that requires even more volunteers. But what would you not do, right? So we've got through step 7. We're making connections, people. We're helping them to come back. We're helping them to feel like they are part of the community. Step 8, coaching. And this is the first time that I'd heard coaching used in this context. I'd always heard it used in the context of raising up new leaders or working with staff. But they suggest actually coaching with your congregation, helping them decide what is their next step in discipleship. And so they have a survey in their book. It's on page 88. I highly recommend that you check it out. And what the coaches are going to do, they're just going to sit and listen with people. They're going to be this active listening post. The survey tells them ahead of time what areas they want to focus on in ministry. And the coach's goal is just to have one step, one area of focus that they can grow. The coach is not aiming to make them perfect, to make them the Johns of the Gospels, right? The goal is not to give them 5 books that they have to read coming out of here. The goal is that they, as individuals, identify one step where they can grow in discipleship, and the coach has succeeded. And they said that they've experienced huge success with this. Okay. Step 9, lifting leaders. We talked about kind of along the way, how do we identify leaders, your spiritual gifting, working with leaders. Tom Maurer talked with me after the last session, and he was saying, you know, one of the greatest things I ever did was I always taught the membership class. He said 6 to 8 weeks, and I was able to get to know the new people right away. I got to know their gifting up front, know their story, and then figure out who the good leaders are. I know what they do for work. I know what their family life is like. I know it all. He said, I had this one class. I had 10 leaders in one class. It was amazing. That's one of the steps in the discipleship pathway. Back here at the charge up, or back here at the minimum requirements for discipleship, they're not necessarily the mature people, but you've identified them early enough that you can get them into a leader mentoring process. And the mentoring process that's laid out here is one that's pretty tried and true, where it's kind of an apprenticeship, right? I'll do it, you watch, we'll talk about how we did it, and throughout the process to the final steps then, I've eventually handed everything over to you, and you are now replicating yourself as a leader. That's the ultimate goal. Questions about lifting up leaders? Okay. Finally then, the measure and evaluate. As a conference, anybody do vital signs? No? Okay. Okay, so most all of us do. Do you actually use your vital signs? Yes? How have you had an opportunity to use them? Anybody?
We watch our attendance.
You watch your
and
attendance?
trend our financial giving.
And what do you look for? Like how?
Fluctuations, and then making sure if there are big fluctuations that we know the reason.
Okay.
Both in numbers of guests, members attendance, as well as financially. There are dips for certain reasons sometimes, and other times there might not be a clear reason.
Right.
We're trying to figure out what those are.
Nice. Okay.
And then if our attendance drops, it might be because 8 people went to a nursing home, but at least we know that. Versus 8 people stopped coming because something happened that upset them. So we need to, so we watch that.
Good. Anything that you track outside of vital signs? Does anybody use Servant Keeper or a different kind of database system?
Icon.
What do you use?
We use it mostly for financial services. It's called Icon.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And we have people's addresses, phone numbers, birthdays, and then their giving.
Okay.
But it can do more. We just don't use the other aspects.
Okay.
We have a form set up for memorial funds, and when memorial funds come in, from, especially from outside groups, so families can at least say thank you and maintain those relationships.
Okay.
We use Planning Center for all of our small groups and
For your small groups?
yeah, Planning
Okay.
Center, they launched groups about a year ago,
Okay.
and so then teachers or leaders can track attendance.
Gotcha.
And we can get unique people who are unique individuals who are attending groups.
Gotcha.
We also use it for children in youth ministry as well. But actually, it's interesting because that actually came from a need to track for vital signs.
Uh-huh.
We didn't realize how beneficial it was going to be. So now we also, in children and youth ministry, if somebody's missed for 4 weeks, then we send a postcard and say, hey, we miss you.
Wonderful.
Make sure to check to see how you're doing, you need anything. And that's been actually very, very productive and helpful.
Wonderful.
But we didn't even know we were missing.
We started doing that for attendance.
Mhm.
In just 3 weeks, they get a phone call or a note, and someone's actually checking each week, because that way someone doesn't fall through the cracks if they're not there and there's something wrong.
Yep. Nobody even noticed I stopped attending.
Yep.
Just a little thing, ask the financial secretary to let me know if there's a big change in somebody's giving, plus or minus, just as a sign that there's somebody who's, if there's a big change in their giving, something's happened. You know, they've lost a job, sometimes, this was my story, but there was a change. There was a woman who suddenly started getting a lot more. And the pastor went to talk to her and said, well, I have cancer, and I just want to make sure that I'll be okay when, you know, when I die. So that's when you get, you know, so it becomes opportunities for pastoral care that, again, you wouldn't know about.
Right? Absolutely. They recommend also within the book checking out not only first-time givers, right, who actually makes a gift for the first time. Some churches don't track guest giving, right? They don't track it at all. Every gift, every single gift that is trackable should be thanked, right? But they recommend we track first-time giving and keep an eye on how many new people you have given to the church. First-time regular giving, so if you have an automatic transaction available in your congregation, even if somebody gives $5 a week and they previously gave $60 once a year, right? First of all, you've net gained. But secondly, you're developing a spirit of generosity within that person and a deeper discipleship and commitment, which also means when it comes to your vision, now you've got somebody who's sold out and personally invested. So they're going to be eager to step up and see to it that the church is doing what they want to see it do. So tracking those regular giving transitions. They also recommend tracking individuals in service. So who all is volunteering in your church and how many unique servants do you have? So we have within our church this amazing couple who they volunteer on the hospital visitation team, the hospitality team, the choir. They're in a small group. They do the home visitation team. They go to Mission Central. Like, they do 100 things around the church. And that's wonderful. But now I've got 2 people that I've counted 6 times. Right? How many unique servants do we have? When we see that grow, now we know the 80-20 rule is changing. Right? So they recommend you track also your servants in ministry.
Do you guys have a tool for that in your church?
That one we're trying to kind of equip.
A little hard to do.
Yeah. For us right now, it's a mentality of, okay, that's great. We could ask Bob and Karen, but they've always done everything. They always say yes. Who else can we ask? So it's more an intentionality of when we're looking for servants. We can run reports in Servant Keeper. We don't currently track those things, but we should. Servant Keeper I find to be wonderful with the giving, and we also can generate attendance rosters for small groups and Sunday school classes. And it can all be tracked in there, which we do. And then the last point that they have on here is always evaluate what works, what doesn't, and what needs to change, right? Evaluation's essential. How about your discipleship pathways? What challenges have you run into? Where are you kind of stalled out? What's your church working on? What would you like to do? What's your dream?
We've gotten all the way to knowing that we've got to do something.
I'm tempted to laugh, but that is huge.
Sadly, yeah.
It's a holy angst.
Yeah.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
I said we've gotten all the way to knowing that we need to do something.
Yes, ma'am.
We are starting a new bridge event called the Turquoise Table. I don't know how many people have heard of it, but it's actually an international movement now, but Google it. It's something that a woman did in her own neighborhood to get to know her neighbors. But it translates. So I read the book when I was recovering from knee replacement surgery, and I was so excited I bought 8 copies, and I thought the Wednesday morning group, well, no, they did not. So I started giving the book away. So last Saturday in our community coal festival parade, 2 of our leaders who really have caught a vision for this literally pushed our turquoise table as its own float in the parade. We're doing a kickoff next week. It will be in the churchyard. The whole purpose is for us as neighbors in the church to get to know our neighbors. It's not a come to Jesus, come to church. It'll be outside on the church grounds, and it's a bright turquoise. We've done training for volunteers, you know, what to say, what not to say. It'll be staffed according to people's convenience, just to try to give us a place to interact with our neighbors and actually get to know them.
Cool.
The church has a good reputation in the community for outreach and being active, but we still don't know our neighbors by name. And so part of my thinking is that it's as scary for committed church people to leave the building to go out into the yard as it is for not church people to come into the building. So it's kind of a halfway place right near the sidewalk, and context is everything. We don't know if this is going to work or not, but I'm excited about the people that are willing to invest in it, especially because July 1st I will be retired. But there are a large number of laity that have caught a vision for this and just trying it.
Cool.
It's bridge.
Cool.
It's just a bridge, but it might work.
Absolutely. It's a wonderful opportunity, and you got to try it. It sounds like you've already built the grassroots. It's going to continue after you're gone, which is so challenging in an itinerant system. And yet you're headed in the direction that we want. And if it fails, okay,
Yeah,
we evaluate.
and we get an extra picnic table.
Okay.
What can go wrong?
Okay. Nice. Anybody else? I feel like at my funeral, you guys are avoiding eye contact.
In my case, as I'm moving to a new appointment this year, besides prayer, how would you recommend going about doing those initial first steps to a discipleship plan with a new congregation, new place, new fresh start for everybody?
It's a really great question. There is a training that takes place in Texas called Passing the Baton. And some of the things that they recommend are listening sessions within your congregation. In the first 6 weeks, have kind of small gatherings, a dozen or so people in the homes of the congregation, advertised that people can go, where they can meet you, and you can just ask questions. How are we doing? What do you love about your church? What drives you nuts? What do I need to know as a pastor coming in? Take it all with a grain of salt, right? Meet with key leaders. Have a one-on-one with all of your key leaders, your leadership teams, council, finance, staff parish, trustees, lay leader, people involved in worship. It's a lot of meetings, staff, right? Devote at least an hour to each and just hear their story. What makes you tick? Why are you excited about ministry here? Why are you here? Right? How did this become your church home? What do you love about what we do? And in the course of those meetings, you're going to find who the real movers and shakers of the church are. And you're going to find also who the real phonies and fakers are. And that's going to gear you for your next step. And even in those meetings, one of the great things that Kay did when she came to the conference in meeting with people, she asked the question, who else do I need to meet with? Who else do I need to know in this congregation? And that's an important question. Lovett Weems out of Wesley's Lewis Leadership Center, he says in your first week at your church, you should go and meet the mayor, the people that work in the township or borough building, local police, fire, business leaders, just kind of walking by, take your business card. Hey, I'm the new pastor at so-and-so. I just wanted to come by and say hi. You know, that's it. It's just that quick intro. And they will lift out, you know, what they think is appropriate. Maybe there's something they've been itching to share with you and never had the opportunity. It's a great transition time opportunity. Are you married? Kiss your spouse goodbye for like 3 months. But know that you're in a season where you're going to be running for a little bit, but it's got potential to be very good.
When is this over? 4:45?
Actually, we're supposed to go till 5.
Okay, cool. Ask more questions then.
Go for it, Nate.
Okay, cool. So at the very beginning, you were talking about CrossFit and how there's a very clear step process to go from 1, 2, 3 years here. Does a discipleship pathway, in my mind, a discipleship pathway would not look that clear in some regards. Maybe on a micro level, it would look more, you know, because some people come in the first time to church, some people come in the first time to a serving opportunity, some people come in the first time to a small group somebody went into, right? So they can come in anywhere. And the way that they grow is going to be different because someone may have grown from the church and so they actually pray every day. But they don't go to church, they don't know anything, they don't, you know, all that kind of stuff. So it'd be much harder to have, okay, everybody in the church, step 1, we want you all to do this. If you're doing this, then you can go to step, well, I've already been on step 4, but I haven't done step 1 yet. Maybe if you macroed it out a bit, then you could see a perspective, you could see maybe a clear delineation from like entering in to being served to growing to serving, then to leading in some capacity, right? You can kind of see that on a macro level. But I'm trying, does do what are the names?
Mike and Ken?
Mike and Ken. Do they? I've looked online a bit at different discipleship pathways, and I've never seen a consistent layout or format. I looked on your website while you were talking, and I saw you guys under disciples it says time, talent, treasure.
It's old language.
Do you have that's not your discipleship pathway?
No.
Okay.
It's love, learn, live, lead.
Okay.
Love and worship, learn in small groups and Sunday school classes. Live in mission and ministry, lead others to do the same.
Okay.
With the context of your question,
Yeah.
I hear a lot of fresh expressions. Are you familiar with fresh expressions? So fresh expressions has kind of radically changed how we see discipleship and the inroads, on-ramps into the church. And it comes out of community that, the front door has now become the side door. I think, though, there's still importance to having an intro point for everybody that, hey, this is the system, this is how we inform you, we educate you, we orient you. So like around here, we have Pizza with the Pastor. So if you want to get your kid baptized, if you want to be involved in mission or ministry, if you want to become a disciple at Trinity, Pizza with the Pastor. If you are a first-time guest and you love to learn more, we'd love you to sign up. It's the second Sunday of the month at 12:30. Pizza with the Pastor, come on out. And that's the inroad that everybody knows. So whether you came in through a small group, a fresh expression, or something else, that's...
If you're interested in taking the next step, it's Pizza with the
That's
Pastor.
Pizza
Open mic night is what...
Exactly, that's what they use at Morning Star.
Okay.
Yeah. That then, I use Pizza with the Pastor. It becomes a 2-hour experience where we then give them, okay, here's your next steps. This is how we love, learn, live, lead. And you can approach it how you want. My goal is kind of more organic, that here are the expectations. When you are loving, you're going to be in worship every week. You're going to do a daily prayer time. You're going to have small group, you're going to have personal devotions and a Bible study, personal Bible reading time. Under learn, you're going to have a small group class. You're going to be a lifelong learner. You're going to attend our shape class to learn your abilities, your personality, your experiences that shape you for ministry. Under live, you're going to serve in mission and ministry somewhere in the church. And I also want to challenge you to go on a mission trip once every 4 years. Maybe it's with our youth. God bless you. Under lead, I want you to pray for our church, to pray for our community, and to invite your friends and family to come out and check it out. Right? So those are my expectations. And we've got a discipleship covenant that they see, and then we check in with them. How's it going? We've got a small groups person, Ashley, who helps them with their learn component. Are you finding a small group that clicks for you? Do we need to launch a new one? We've got worship people who help with the love component, and Ashley kind of gets into that too. So different elements and ways that we try to get people involved.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I like it. It's what we got.
So what you're talking about, the live, love, lead, whatever that thing is. I'm sure I'll be able to...
Love, learn, live, lead. It's
Yeah. That's your target. Like, in a perfect world, if you did all these things, we think that we would have made a disciple of Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Not that it's complete.
Right.
And that it's a lifelong process.
Sanctification.
But it is this is what we're aiming. You'll be moving towards. Okay. That helps to bring some clarity to it. Yes. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Sure.
I'm gonna ask some more questions. Unless somebody else has some, you jump in where you want to. So did you do that whole step 2? Get this sit rep. My guess is at some point with that one, here's my actual question.
Yep.
With that one of the, I think many churches just take the shotgun approach to programs and ministries. It's like, instead of thinking about, okay, what's our end goal, and how are we gonna get there via our programs, we think, oh, I was raised in a church, and we had Vacation Bible School. Oh, this church over here is doing a contemporary service, like that's probably important. Membership, that's important because the denomination wants that. So we just end up with, oh, quilting, you like to quilt, great. And so people just like plug into stuff, and it's just like, you just do whatever, and then Lord willing, you'll be a disciple of Jesus Christ and hopefully transform the quilting world. But one of
Very
the,
good at this, David.
one of the things that I think we need to do, that as we align everything to the target, we also have to pull out the machete and start hacking something. What did that look like in your context here? Did that happen? Because obviously, I don't know when you read that book, when it came out, and obviously,
Yeah.
we've learned all the way.
So the book only just came out in September, October, I think we got it. So no, I didn't have the benefit of the book, which I wish I had. When I arrived, there really wasn't anything in place. I really did walk into a clean slate. There was no discipleship plan. The mission was the mission of the United Methodist Church, but that's because I said it was.
No one would have known better.
I mean, nobody would have argued.
Yeah.
There had been a lot of necessary deconstruction. So when I walked in, we did listening sessions like I was just sharing. I met with all my leaders. My first few weeks, that's what it was. And I had the advantage of starting this process. I learned I was moving January 20th, that I was moving July 1st. So I had a lot of on-ramp time. I met with council, I met with staff. I had a lot of build-up. So that when I walked in, after the first couple of weeks, I was able to roll out, this is what we're doing. Love, learn, live, lead. We restructured the worship folder that way, the newsletter. We were able to implement the vision statement. We're bringing hope to the hurting to rewrite stories one life at a time. And I had stories to support these things. And I had a sermon series on the front end to do this. But there were also all of these ministries that already existed, right? Because some of them had not been deconstructed. What I appreciate learning along the way is it's easier to stop supporting something than it is to kill it. I don't have to help you do something that's not helpful to me. But to actively kill it maybe will take more time. Some things we were able to kill for lack of interest. Hey, this isn't possible. This isn't popular. We're not going to do it. I remember SOS was really, really popular years ago. It was Simply Over 60, and it was a senior group that went traveling together. Well, they were now all 90, and there were 3 of them. That was pretty easy. Ladies, do you want to continue this? Well, yeah, we think it's important. You should find a leader. Nope. Nope, I shouldn't. Okay, then I guess we're going to close down. That's fine. So yeah, and we're still kind of fine tuning and figuring out what needs to go.
And the other option, cutting, breaking, or halting things is one way, or however you make that happen. Halting is still what's happening. Some can be refocused. Like I think about the quilting group, who does great stuff. It's all ministry, prayer oriented. That has a place, I think, in the discipleship pathway. There are some groups that I think could, with a little bit of shaping, have a bit more productivity in the discipleship, and not just fellowship.
Right.
Kind of like the senior group of 60,
Right.
which is kind of redundant.
And some of it has important. You got to evaluate it each.
Oh
each
yeah,
to its
how
own
does it mean
merit.
seniors over 60?
Yeah.
Seniors is over 65,
It was simply over 60.
Oh, simply over 60.
Simply over 60.
Yeah, so anyway, readjusting too. Okay.
I died my first month here. Fortunately, I didn't catch flack for that. I got real lucky.
A lot of that too, I think, depends on whether it's something that you've got people investing time into it, that you need to have them invest into other things that are more helpful, versus if they continue to invest time in that, it's really not going to make a whole lot of difference either way. If those 3 9-year-old women had continued to do that, very likely you weren't taking energy that was going to get dumped into something else.
Right.
So that becomes part of the calculus too.
And I think there's some decisions that you have to make about how you're going to spend your time.
Right.
There was a Bible study every Wednesday morning, and when I rolled in, I did a pretty active Bible study with them. We worked through Adam Hamilton's Making Sense of the Bible. That was not what they were looking for. They wanted story time. I'm not interested in story time. You can find another leader. That's not my plan. So I didn't need to kill it, but by pulling out of it as the pastor who had traditionally taught this class, that sent a very clear message. There was also, I'm trying to think of what else we had done. Karen, what else did we do? Wow, I sound so old.
No, but it's positive that you say that to people that are trying to develop plans, to be able to have the courage as a pastor to pull out. Because I don't teach our Bible study on Wednesday nights because they want the Bible according to George and not according, so I'm not participating in that. And I've made that, clear.
Right.
So, you have to have that, you have to be able to be willing to do that, and, because you just can't stop bearing fruit or, or at least being productive in that form.
Yeah.
You have to have the courage to say, I'm just not going to, I'm the pastor, we're getting paid for it. Well, that's great. Then, we're going to take a different route. If you don't want to go that route, then we're not going to go there.
And I still love to teach.
Right.
I mean, it's my passion, but yeah. When it comes to home visitation, the pastoral care gifts are not high on my spiritual gifts. And I've been clear from day one, like, that is not what I'm gifted at. If you see me coming, you're dying. Like, that's not good. It's just bad. And I wrote letters to all of the homebound members, and I said, look, I will be glad to come visit you if you'd like me to, but otherwise, you're going to have homebound visitation team. And empowered them to do that. That freed me up to be here to do the things that needed to happen through the week, which were very different and sorted. So, I had to pick and choose how I spent my time. Unfortunately, in the course of all of that, because we do 3 services on a Sunday, 8, 9:30, and 11, I was never able to go to Sunday school classes. I attended Sunday school class the week before I got here. That's the last time I've ever attended Sunday school in this building. There are easily 100, maybe 125 people that attend Sunday school every week in this building. That's 125 people that I'm not connecting with on that level. Like, that's a huge problem. And I have no quality control over what's being taught, how it's being taught. Like, that's terrifying to me. That's my job. So working with the children's ministry director and youth ministry director, I've got a handle on that. But that's one of the reasons that we just hired a new person, director of ministry advancement, so that she can help evaluate how are the classes going? Are they really doing what they're supposed to? And so that's 3 years out of when I first started. And this was part of the plan originally, but I wasn't able to implement it until we got to a place that we could. So.
I think something that's helped us with looking at eliminating or not some of the ministry or some of the things too is, and you talked about this at the beginning, is for everybody to be very clear about the mission and vision of the church, because we've gotten to a point where it's so clear for us that in our staff meetings or in our leadership meetings, our pastor says, or on our one-on-ones, is this program that you're doing in line with your ministry and your vision? And the leadership at this point knows that if they say no to that, then it's time to either, like he said, reformat it a little, or be okay with letting it go. And I think people are more okay with letting it go because they understand now that if it doesn't fit with our mission and our vision, we shouldn't necessarily be doing it.
And you're at Middlesex?
Yeah.
Does everybody in the room know the Middlesex story?
No.
Would you tell us? The event you canceled?
Yeah, okay. So we have done traditionally some big events at our campus. And so we had a extravaganza, we called it, that we did probably for 3 or 4 years, where we would probably get 700 or 800 people on our campus on a Sunday for an Easter egg hunt. 10,000 eggs filled, and it just was it was a great opportunity for people to come to our campus and see our church, and So our new vision is being in our community now. We just revisioned at the beginning of this year, and so we're trying to find ways that we can meet people where they are instead of people coming to us, because it just turned into a big Easter egg hunt. It wasn't, so we revisioned that. So we decided this year to take our egg hunt to our 3 we targeted 3 areas for our new vision, and one of them is the 3 mobile home parks in our community. And so we took our egg hunt, we canceled it, and took it to those 3 mobile home parks to try to minister and build relationships with some of those mobile home parks. So, and it was very cool. And I mean, the turnout was maybe 40, 60 something, maybe at one it might have been 20. But again, it's a start. It's a risky change, but it was in line with our vision, and that's what we felt that we were being called to do. A very cool story. I don't know if you heard this part, but we got a letter from someone at one of the trailer parks that didn't even have a child the next week that said, I don't have a child, but my neighbor child came to your event, and I can't even tell you what it meant to them that you came to us, because they don't feel comfortable coming into a church. So it's kind of a cool, and if you just get one of those, that's affirming.
Yeah. That's awesome. But tell me how your leadership would think about canceling an event with
Risky.
800 people. It is risky. And sometimes it'll pay off and sometimes it won't. You won't know till the other side of the kingdom.
When you're trying to develop leadership too, sometimes, let a program die, it brings about new leadership. We have a festival, and, when I came, it was to that point where leadership was getting burnt out, and then they automatically thought the pastor was going to lead, and I said, no, I'm not leading the festival. So we canceled it for the whole year. And that festival isn't just, it's a great community outreach, but it also provides great income for the missions to be able to do work in the community. Because everything that's there, it's full profit, doesn't pay bills, it goes back out into the community. But we left it die for a whole year. And then people were like, well, why did it die? Well, nobody was there to lead it. And then it developed that future leadership, and they came in and they began to lead. So sometimes even things that really should die, if you let them die, other people will be able to come in and fill their spots. And if it's meant to be, they will. If not, well, then it won't get filled. Well, but you can't burn yourself out filling every slot and trying to make everything work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's another piece of it too, to be really intentional about what's the most important way to spend your time as particularly as pastor leader. What are the things that I absolutely have to do in this place? What are the things that I need to hand off to other folks? Because if, the greatest bottleneck of a church can be, this is what the pastor can accomplish. And if you throttle it to that, then bad things happen. Or good things don't happen.
One person can only care for up to 125 people. I see that it's 10 to 5, so I'm going to let Karen hand out the evaluations. I want to pray for us while she does that, and thank you all for coming. Let's pray. Gracious and awesome God, we thank you for this day. I thank you for these leaders who have tough decisions, Lord. They have a tough calling, a tough challenge in front. We are breaking ground, Lord, trying to figure out discipleship pathways, trying to figure out the trail through the woods. And we ask you to lead the way, to blaze the trail and help us understand the next steps. Guide each one in their own churches, in their own communities, in their own context, and help us all, Lord, to bring you glory through the work of mission and ministry in this world, to bring transformation. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.